I'm Helene Kiser. I'm a writer, I am your writing Sherpa, and I am the founder of the Butterfly Blueprint. And these are my 5 things that you need if you want to be a successful author or writer. Number 1, I am not going to start with the one that everybody expects, which is the usual advice to read widely and voraciously. That should actually be a given. And yes, audiobooks count. Rather, my advice is to start a journal that is the place where you study what you read with annotations. And what I mean by that is as you're reading, whatever it is you're reading, write down notes about techniques that you notice that you really enjoy or that you don't enjoy. Notice the parts of speech, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives and adverbs. What works for you? How are you responding to what you're reading? Where do you notice what the author is doing in what they're presenting to you? This is a working journal where you're noticing specifically what you're reading and the craft of that reading, and you write it down and you make notes for yourself for later. No one else is ever going to see this, so your journal can be whatever you want it to be, but use this journal as a place to study for yourself the craft of other writers. If you are serious about improving your craft, then the best way to do that is to actually study craft. The biggest difference I see between writers who succeed and writers who don't is not necessarily talent that they're born with, but an ability to work, to really see what are other writers doing, where does it work, where does it not work, and why. Because that why is always going to be really individual for you. Nobody writes the same way, nobody has the same fingerprint, and nobody has the same writing fingerprint. So it's not about modeling after others, but it is noticing what published authors are doing. Note that, write it down, keep that in a record in your working journal so that you can use this as a dialogue with yourself to help you learn the methods of craft. My second piece of advice is also a journal, but please don't run away, let me explain. It's a different kind of journal than the one in my first piece of recommendations. This one, if the first one is a working journal, then this is your journal for playtime. Now, it can obviously be in the same journal. You don't have to literally keep separate journals. You can do these online if you prefer that, if you like to work on a keyboard. I like a physical journal, but that's not necessary. Don't take the word journal and think it must be a Dear Diary kind of thing, because that's not what I mean. Just a place to write things down. So in this second journal, your playtime journal, this is your creative work, and it's separate from the drafts you're actually working on. These are exercising your muscles, like athletes do in the gym. You go to this journal when you want to play. So set yourself up with tasks, and you can make up any rules you want. This is your journal, so it's up to you. I like to give myself tasks like describe the garden without using any adjectives, or write about winter without ever using the word cold. You get the idea. It doesn't matter what your rules are, it's giving yourself some parameters so that your creativity can work within these parameters, but also have the ability to flower in a way that it wouldn't if the world was your oyster. Use it for the place where you work through things that are not in your working drafts. I find a lot of the time that the reason why people have writer's block is because they're like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna write this thing, and then you freeze. But if you've got a journal where you can work through some of your ideas and exercise your muscles, then it doesn't freeze that way because your mind somehow isn't taking it seriously in a way, so it's allowed to play. And the very serious work of learning how to be more creative, how to be more productive, works itself out in the pages of this journal. Think of it this way, the world's greatest concert pianists didn't suddenly reach a level where they stopped playing their scales to practice. This second journal, your playtime journal, is the place where you do your scales. My third piece of advice is to always end your writing day with something unfinished. And what I mean by that could be that you just stop in the middle of a sentence. It could be that you've finished for the day, but you write yourself notes on exactly what you're going to pick up the next day. Don't stop at a natural ending point. Because what happens is when you go the next day to do your writing, you will be confronted with all kinds of obstacles. Most of these in our own brains. Some of them are real. But if you have left your piece unfinished the day before with a clear starting place, there's no thinking involved. And you're able to just step into the task and be like, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to finish that sentence, or I need to write this piece of dialogue, or I need to begin in this scene and go to the next scene. Or if it's something more nonfiction, you've got a point, your next point in your argument that you need to tackle. Leave something unfinished so that when you come back to it, you have a particular place to start and you aren't confronted with all the, obstacles that are real and also imagined in our brains. It is the easiest way to be able to begin again the next day. And beginning again is what keeps so many writers from writing, because it's hard to start. Number 4 is to learn to edit. 90% of good writing is actually editing, not drafting. The real work of writing is in the editing. And I know a lot of writers say that they just don't like to edit, or they think, that's their editor's job to do. And that's true, but it's also not true. Very, very few writers ever just put a draft on the page and shipped it off to an editor, and that was the end of their job. I'm not even sure that anyone ever did. Certainly no one I've ever known has ever done it that way. The real work of writing is in the editing, but that's also where the fun can come. When you're in the writing flow, it's all just coming, and you're writing or you're typing and you're just trying to keep up with everything really fast. And when you're editing, you slow down and you really see what's here. And like the old story about Michelangelo, you chip away at everything that isn't David. That's what editing is the chipping away until you're left with David. So there's 3 different kinds of editing, and they are all important. You can't neglect any of them. The first thing you want to do is developmental editing. That's kind of the 30,000-foot view of your manuscript, where you're looking at it for, just overall, is this working? Is it organized correctly? Is all of the content there? Is it complete? Is it consistent? And so on. So that'll be your first editing pass. Your next official editing pass is line editing, which is often confused with copy editing. It's not the same thing. Line editing is literally what it sounds like. You are going sentence by sentence through your draft and determining, does this sentence make sense? Does it naturally follow from the one before it and the one after it? Is it clear? Have we made clear who the people are? Have we made clear what's at stake? Do we know what the point is? And so on. Can we use a different word? Have we kept the verb tense the correct? That's what you do with line editing. Finally, it's copy editing, which is what we often think of when we think of editing. And that's, the grammar, the punctuation, all that kind of good stuff. They are all important, and they are all necessary for the writer, him, her, or their self to do, always. Yes, should it be selected for publication, your editor is always going to do their own editing work on it. That doesn't mean you've done a poor job if you've edited it yourself. And it also doesn't mean that you don't have to do any editing because, well, they'll take care of it. You need to present your very best work to your editor. And the only way you can do that is to learn to edit. If you feel uncomfortable with editing yourself, which you're not alone, that is a number one complaint of so many writers that I work with. That's why I started my editorial notes newsletter that I send out every week, which is devoted specifically to tasks of self-editing. And my hundreds of subscribers will tell you that, this is their number one problem across the board, no matter what they write in. But if you're a little concerned about learning how to edit yourself, then start editing the work of others first. Pull something out of the newspaper and get a pen and start editing things. Start looking at it developmentally. Is it holistic? What sentences would you change? Do you notice grammatical mistakes? In that order. And as you start getting more comfortable, or perhaps you have a writing buddy and you can exchange work and agree to do that for each other, that can be great too. But you've got to become good at editing. If you are not a good editor, then you are not going to be a successful writer. My fifth and final piece of advice is a little bit counterintuitive, but spend time actively not writing. Take breaks from your writing. It's so important to put your drafts in a literal or a physical drawer and walk away from it. Do something completely different. I don't care what it is. Go for a walk, go out to dinner, clean the house, play with your kids, watch a movie. Don't write. Build time to not write into your writing schedule, because that not writing time is actually just as much a part of your writing time as the actual pen to paper or fingers to keyboard is. It's necessary for your brain to be able to walk away from something. Well, your brain can't walk away, but you know what I mean. You walk away and your brain goes with you. To be able to walk away from it and attend to it in the back of your mind without even really actively thinking about it. Our brains do amazing work when they're left on their own. How often do you have fantastic ideas just as you're falling asleep? Or you'll wake up with something, or you're in the shower, or whatever. It's natural that when we let our brain have a break, it will do its work in the background, and it will help you figure out problems. It will help you come back to your drafts with clear ideas on how to fix something that seemed absolutely unfixable just the day before. Don't write for specific times. Instead, go live your life. Live. Whether you're writing fantasy or you're writing software manuals, it doesn't matter. The life that we live is what gives us the voice that we have in the writing that we do. If all we ever did was write, we wouldn't really ever have anything to think about. We wouldn't have anything to write about. We would have no life experience. And I don't mean that you only need to write what you know. If we were all only writing what we knew, then how many novels would have never been written, right? It's not that kind of advice. But it is allowing your brain to just have a break, build it into your schedule, and come back to it after you've had a rest. And you'll be amazed at what suddenly seems so clear that you just had no idea how to fix 24 hours before.